This is the iPhone XS, and it's not the best camera that you can buy today, but I'm going to tell you a few reasons why I'm using it and why you might consider it over buying a brand new iPhone 15 or any other newer iPhone. So I went from the iPhone XS to the iPhone 13 Pro. And after I bought the iPhone 13 Pro, I was like, it's not that much better. Sure, the photos and the videos are a little bit better. It has a little bit better low light performance. It does a better job for video stabilization, and the battery is way better. And you may think these are really valid reasons on why you should buy the newest iPhone, but you don't really need all those features. And I remember when the iPhone XS came out, and to be able to just have a lot better photo quality, that's the main reason why I bought this camera. And when I got the 13 Pro, it almost seemed like the photos were a little bit worse. Just some of the lighting effects that they added in post-processing, they just were a little bit sharper. I felt like the iPhone XS did just about as good of a job, and I didn't need all those cameras. I had 3 camera lenses on it, and I was doing fine with just the 2 small ones on here. And another thing I hated about that camera is it was much larger, it had worse ergonomics, and then it has this huge camera bump on it. And this has a camera bump on it, but it was so much smaller than the iPhone 13 Pro. And that's just why it kind of got on my nerves. It was harder to lug around, and I just didn't really like the shape of it. So this year I actually sold my iPhone 13 Pro, and I decided to go with this one. And I was gonna wait for the iPhone 15 to kind of see if it was gonna offer any features that were better. I knew it was getting USB-C, but I was like, you know what? I can do wireless charging with this phone. Why do I need USB-C? And what I actually do is this phone, I use my iPhone 13 Pro case that I purchased with it, and I put it on my wireless charger, and I set my old iPhone XS on it, and that's how I charge this phone. Okay, so here's my iPhone 13 case, and I'm just gonna put my iPhone XS inside the case like this, and I just set it on my Belkin charger. So it pretty much has MagSafe, because that's the only way I use MagSafe. I just use it for charging. And so I just put this phone on there. I can charge it with MagSafe, even though this phone doesn't have MagSafe. And you can actually buy a whole lot of MagSafe accessories for this phone online, even though it doesn't have MagSafe. And it will pretty much work just like MagSafe does. I can charge this phone just like you would with iPhone 13 Pro using MagSafe. And so that's another reason why I don't see any reason to really upgrade. So I'm gonna go over the pros and cons and just kind of talk about that, and then you can decide for yourself. Okay, so first off, the benefits of this camera over the newer phones is it's lighter. They came out with the new titanium cameras. I think this is still even lighter than that, and it's probably even thinner than that. I mean, look at how thin this is. It is tiny, and it has my second reason for getting this camera is the ergonomics. It has those nice rounded edges, and that looks so much better than what you will get on any of the newer cameras. Now, I know they're a little bit more ergonomic because they made those square edges a little bit softer on the iPhone 15, but they are not going to be as ergonomic as this iPhone here, and that's why I think it's just it's super easy to hold, and that's why I love it. And I know a lot of people just buy a case. I used to have a skin on the back, and I took it off because it actually ruined the glass on it, and it kind of, well, I dropped this phone a bunch of times, so it has some broken glass on the back, as you can see here. But I just want to be able to hold it in my hand all the time. I do drop this phone probably quite regularly. I haven't shattered it enough. I'm probably going to put some more protective screens on the front and back so it doesn't completely break. And if it does break, it's not really that big of a deal because this phone is only worth like $150 anyway. So it's lighter, it's more ergonomic, and then it takes great photos. Like, a lot of people don't think that this old of a camera would take good photos, but you would be surprised. It takes perfectly good photos. I think iPhone photos in general are they're not that great. They are too sharp. They have a little bit too much contrast and saturation, and that's why I would rather shoot like the camera that I'm using right now, which is the Sony a6700. I just don't think they shoot that great of photos, and so I'd rather just use this camera for just, taking a picture of my son or something, or just if I'm going out and I want to have a photo of, kind of use it as like a travel log. I think this is a good phone to have, and I feel like I'm not going to get any better photos with my iPhone 13 Pro, I was just using my Sony cameras anyway, rather than using the camera. And I just kind of felt like that was a huge waste to spend $1,000 on a camera that I'm not even really using it that much. And so that's another reason why I think the photos in this older camera are completely fine, and I don't think you really need to upgrade to anything. There are definitely huge improvements, especially with low light, but I don't really shoot in dark places that often. Another thing about the camera on this phone is it has really good video. It's not the best video. It has a little bit of stabilization. It's not as smooth as the iPhone 11. My wife has the iPhone 11. I think that is just a much better phone because it has smoother footage. So that's the one thing that kind of bothers me sometimes. But what I can do is, if I want smoother video, I can just buy a really cheap DJI gimbal and just throw this phone on the back of it and get really good video, smooth footage that's going to be even better than the newest iPhone today. And that's one of the main reasons why I didn't want to hold on to this phone, is because of the video footage. But if I put it on a gimbal, like, that's something I don't have to worry about. Or if I just put it on a tripod, like, I'm going to have good stable footage. Another pro of this phone is it has wireless charging, and I don't care about the newest USB-C because I don't plug this phone in that often anyway. I can just use my wireless charger and charge it up, and I mean, it seems to work fine like that. Every once in a while I will plug it in, and it would be nice to be able to have one port like USB-C for everything. And I think when I do eventually upgrade to the newest phone, I would want USB-C, because it would just make things easier for when I'm like traveling and I just want to have one cord for everything. But I mean, it does fine for wireless charging, and I can get by with it just fine. Okay, so what are the major cons to this iPhone? As I talked earlier, it doesn't have the best battery life. The battery life kind of sucks. I go to work, I work about 8 hours a day. When I get home, my battery, it needs to be charged, which is fine because I just come home, I charge it, and I'm pretty much set for the rest of the night. I can charge this phone quite fast, so it doesn't really make it that big of a deal. The only problem that I have is if I'm going on vacation, if I'm hopping on a plane or something like that and I need extra battery life. But what you can do is you can actually buy like a charger for this phone, like a wireless accessory. Apple actually created a case for this phone, which right now they're super cheap. Like, nobody's buying them because nobody has this phone anymore. And you just put the case on, you can charge it up really quickly, and you don't need an extra battery. Now, Apple doesn't really make these anymore, but that's a simple way that you can get way more battery out of these phones. So if you're someone who has a purse, or if you carry a backpack, or just carry any extra accessories around with you, I'm sure if you go on vacation, you have a bag with you, you just bring that extra battery pack and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about like the battery that's going to die pretty quickly on these things. And right now the capacity of this battery is 89%, which you're pretty much going to find that on any of the newer phones anyway. And I'm surprised that the battery still has 89% capacity after all of these years of using it. Another con of this phone is stabilization. So as I talked about earlier, it doesn't have the best stabilization. If I would gravitate to getting the iPhone 11 just because the stabilization is so much better on that. But for the most part, I think this is a great phone, and I like the 11 just because it has like the same like really great ergonomics with it. But I think it probably has a bigger camera bump on it, and that's kind of why I like this phone. But yeah, the stabilization sucks on here, but if you get a gimbal, you don't really have to worry about it. Another con of this camera is it still uses lightning, but as I talked about earlier, you don't really need lightning, and you can charge it wirelessly, and so that makes me just think that I don't really need lightning. And the last con about this camera is it doesn't do great in low light, but I don't shoot low light that often. If I am shooting low light, I can get some decent results, and I actually don't like how the iPhone shoots low light. I know it does some computational photography but it just seems to make the shadows a lot brighter, and usually I don't need the shadows to be brighter. I just wish during the nighttime I wish the lights weren't so blown out, and there's so much flare in all of the iPhones. If you take a picture of a light at night with any iPhone, it just looks terrible. If you take a picture of the sun during the day, it looks awful. And that's one of the main reasons why I don't like using the iPhone. It just looks way better if you shoot with like a Sony camera or any other mirrorless camera. It's just going to look so much better when you're shooting low light, and I think the iPhone in general hasn't met that requirement. It hasn't met the standards of mirrorless camera or a DSLR when it comes to low light, and it can't reproduce what a light looks like at night or what the sun looks like during the day. And that's why I think that the low light performance on the newer camera bodies isn't that good anyway. And another thing that we're not talking about here is like these have really good microphones on them. I would say the microphones on these, they haven't really upgraded the microphones in any iPhone in the last few years, and I would say that the microphones on this are incredible, and that's why another reason why you don't need to upgrade is a lot of times when you're shooting video, the quality of the video isn't as important as the audio, and these still shoot with pretty good audio, and you can actually plug in external accessories if you want better audio. So why should you upgrade when you can just use this phone and use other accessories to just make it better? A lot of people will buy the newest phone because it has the latest technology with it, but the best way to use an iPhone is just to use accessories. So like just use a gimbal with this if you want a really good stabilization that's going to be better than any iPhone. And if you want better audio, you just plug in an external microphone like the one I'm using right here on this, and that is going to give you way better audio quality than you'll get in any iPhone anyway. If you want a wireless charging case, you can buy that accessory for this phone and get MagSafe and wireless charging. All you have to do to make this phone better is just to get like really cheap accessories, and you can pretty much make it almost as good as the newest iPhone on the market. All right guys, so what do you think about this? Do you think this, I mean, are you sold on the iPhone XS? You probably aren't. I think for most people, like, it does a great job. It doesn't have some of those pro features like the 120 hertz that you're gonna get with the newest iPhone. But after going from the iPhone 13 Pro and using that higher refresh rate and then going to my XS, I noticed it right away. And so right off the bat, I disabled the motion effects. So like when you swipe up or anything on this phone, it has that motion effect. I just disabled that so I wouldn't notice it as much. And I really haven't noticed it now that I'm using the phone all the time. But it is definitely something that you will notice at first when you go from the Pro phones back down to these phones that don't have as good of refresh rates. But it's something you don't really notice. It's almost like watching, it's like going from a 1080p TV to a 4K TV. Like you might notice at first if you're like really paying attention, but after you watch the movie and you're immersed in it, you don't really notice. So anyway, guys, please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks.